What am I doing that is wrong to make nature want to remove these peaches as being no longer fit to survive? And that has become the whole basis of this movement, in a sense. How can we find the right way to work with nature so that nature isn't required to send her insects to destroy the crop? I was a teacher. I taught in a college in New Jersey for some years, and it wasn't especially satisfactory, and I wanted to know more. In April of 1938, I left for India, and I had a contract for 2 years to teach in this school. And a funny thing happened there. A piece broke out of a tooth, and I went to an American dentist who was nearby the city, and he took an X-ray. He said, "Well, all your teeth are bad. You have to clean them all out and fix them up and stuff like that." Well, I thought to myself, well, how come? I've been trying to live a pretty good life and eat sensibly and stuff like that, you know. And so my mind began to work on, what am I doing this wrong that makes me subject to this when these people who are so simple and eat practically nothing are healthy and well. Right there, my life was changed. I had to find out how to live. These people knew how to live, and I didn't. They had nothing, and I came from a richest country in the world and stuff like that. Incidentally, there was a young lady at the school where I was teaching who had been born and raised in India. Her name was Betty Morgan. Her parents were missionaries, had lived in India 45 years, and so it was her home. She lived there 28 years. And we were both teaching at the same school, and we got married in India and then came back. We found out that a farm school had been developed near Philadelphia. It was called Kimberton Farm School, right near where I had gone to high school many years before. And they were teaching you how to farm organically with no chemicals and no sprays and things like that. And it was just as if it was made for me. And so I learned how to farm with horses. And in 2 years, I knew how to live. I knew I could go out on the farm, and I could raise my kids, and I could live there. And it was the most marvelous thing you ever heard of. You know, it was so thrilling you couldn't believe it. The only trouble was we didn't know what to do after we left there. And I said to Betty, we've got to buy a farm. So we had $200, and her father had come over from India. His wife died, and so he was living with us. And we had 2 children by that time. So we finally decided in this area, just guessed, I'd never been here, put ads in the newspapers, and I found this place across the river. Here, the newspaper man said, "My sister-in-law lives there. We want her to get off the farm. Tell her her farm's for sale." So I went over across Penn's Creek and talked to her. She said, "Oh, no, there's a place just across the stream that was for sale last week. Only went to $4,400, and they want $5,000. Well, I had $200, and somehow I thought, well, nature is taking care of this, and maybe there's a way around this. So I went to the local storekeeper. John Showers was his name, real nice guy, and I told him my problem, and he said, "Well, Paul," he said, "I don't know you from Adam. I've never seen you before. But," he said, "I'm on the board of the bank, and I'll go on your note." And we got the deed, and here we were. That was in 1946. So that's how we got here. We didn't know how we were going to live. We happened to be making apple butter. We called it apple essence instead of apple butter, and we had the big old-fashioned iron kettle out in the backyard, you know, and firewood and everything, and lots of people stirring and cutting up apples and things like that. So the first crop we made was apple butter, and we made 100 quarts, and we sold this for $1 a quart. Well, that was almost the third of what we figured we'd need. That's 3 months' income, so to speak. People started to come, and people started to write, and we kept a little shoebox, and we'd put the letters and the postcards in that, and we'd go over these and laugh and laugh and laugh. Look at these people, you know, wanting to buy food from out here in the country. But that's the way it started. So everything we could think of that would bring in a little bit of money is what we worked on. And then from then on, it just spread out. Well, we'll bake cookies. and we'll use whole wheat flour, and we'll bake bread and use whole wheat flour. And everything was the best. We just insisted on plowing back, putting back more than we took out. That was the whole theory of organic farming. So the principle is that you want to know how nature would do it herself if no one was around. One time I had right in this field here, I was trying different varieties of squash. I got about 10 different varieties, and an old farmer who worked with us said, "Yeah, I have some Hubbard squash. Why don't you plant a couple rows of this seed too?" I didn't care if they over pollinated or interpollinated or whatever. So I planted these, and they started to come up, and they got up about 6-8 inches. And I noticed on this row, these 2 rows that came from the seed the old farmer had given me, there were insects, and they were starting to chew the plants. And they began to blossom, and the insects ate all the blossoms. We never got a thing off of that. Killed the plants. The others all blossomed, all had squash, and so on. How do you explain that? I mean, that I just had to ask myself. That was after I'd been here a number of years. How do you explain the fact that nature seemed to know that row of squash wasn't fit to survive, and therefore it had to be removed, because if she let it go on like that, it would just get worse and worse and worse, and weaker. And so that convinced me that there was something to what we were doing. And all at once I realized after about 12, 15 years that there were no more squash vine borers, and there were hardly any bean beetles left. And the things that people worried about, no tomato worms and so on, we had found the way that nature works. The challenges were that people in the vicinity thought we were doing peculiar things. They were all getting tractors, and I farmed with horses for several years. And then we did peculiar things. We didn't use chemicals on our field. And we were some of the first people to move from the outside into this area. It was a pretty tightly closed, tightly knit group. We were bound and determined not to try to make a good impression, not to try to show off we're communists or whatever they thought we were. But so we began to help in the communities and help with kids who needed help in school and things like that. So the community could see that we really were interested in more than just a farm. My wife and I purchased a bit of land in the community, about 11 acres in the center of the town, and we built a community center. We set up the Walnut Acres Foundation Incorporated, a nonprofit foundation. We built a community center where we have a full-time program going. People come from 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 miles around. There's no place like it anywhere. We also help to support a school in India. We feel that we are responsible to reach out to the whole world wherever we can do it. With the belief that if you do that, and if you can find what nature would like you to do, and in her pattern, so she doesn't have to send insects to remove these plants, then it'll be well balanced, and the food you get from that will be well balanced. And if you eat it in the whole form without a lot of junk added, then you'll be well balanced. It's just as simple as that.